Hi, this is about co-managed IT services and really what's behind the buzzword. I'm Bob Coppedge, CEO Simplex-IT and author of the only 2 books on co-managed IT services, but we'll talk about that later. For now, though, who's the target of this conversation? And that is the internal IT worker. So they're the hero of our story today. So the perspective of this conversation is going to be for them. And what you're going to discover through this conversation is, number one, what is co-managed IT? And I'm really talking about it from an industry standpoint. And then I want to talk about how to self-evaluate your internal IT, which will give you a better idea of whether co-managed is a good fit for you. And then what are the types of co-managed IT services? This is going to be more what we're going to be talking about Simplex-IT's interpretation of co-managed IT services, but it'll be useful for you regardless. Is this for you? Well, if you're frustrated with IT not being appreciated, and if you're worrying about not knowing all of the aspects of your IT, and you're sick and tired of 24/7 being on call, and that whole thing about what's a vacation, and you're not able to do what you know adds most to your or the most value to your organization. And what if you only need a part of a senior tech? Don't use the scalpel. Anyway. And then your IT staff can't fill key roles and responsibilities. And this could be because it's hard to find people these days. If you're in those situations, or just in general, would it be cool if you could just add critical IT tools like documentation, training, all this kind of thing? You can read this. And just add them and not go through the onboarding practice. And we'll talk a little bit about this. That comes with being where it's just you out there. And this is for best practices everywhere. Wouldn't it be cool if you had a strategy for upgrading your IT and if you could become the IT hero for your organization? And by the way, I'm going to be talking about you as if you're a single person, but this is not for just the one person operation. So this is for organizations that have internal IT, even if it's an internal IT staff. We'll talk about how to break that down as we go through this. So who am I? First of all, as I mentioned, I'm the author of the only 2 books on co-managed IT services, and I've spoken at almost every MSP event about co-managed IT, especially prior to the whole pandemic. And I've worked with numerous MSPs and vendors to develop their own co-managed program. And I'm also creator and host of the largest co-managed community, which has currently over 1,500 members. And why am I so passionate on this topic? Well, ultimately, everything we do in IT becomes a hybrid, whether you talk about it from a cloud perspective, or cloud versus on-premise, virtual versus hardware-driven, all of that. Everything ends up becoming a hybrid, and that includes support. Second is, we're the good guys. Simplex-IT, we've been around since 2007. We've been doing co-managed IT since around 2007. And our mantra is we are all about learn first, share first is one of our core values. And our marketing, such as what we're doing here, is all about sharing and educating. This is a picture from one of the conferences I spoke at, DattoCon in 2019 in San Diego. Almost 2,000 of the attendees, technically all my competitors, all got a copy of my book telling them or helping them on how to deliver this exact service. Now, let's talk about IT. IT is complicated. And it's getting more so. It's complicated both for good reasons, as IT gives us more and more tools and more ways for your organization to actually deliver the goods and services through use of technology, whether it be collaboration, cloud-based, on-prem, whatever. But it also is getting more dangerous because of all of the security. Because every time we add a new way to do business that involves IT, the bad guys have found a new way to try to compromise that, especially if we're not quite sure how to implement this stuff, and to put our organization at risk. And it's tougher and tougher for organizations to have internal IT that can handle all aspects of this. You remember when IT used to be just about the blinking lights? I do, because I'm old. So let's get to the first point. What is co-managed IT? And it actually is a very simple situation or relationship. It's a relationship between, we call it between Simplex-IT or whoever your MSP is, managed service provider, and internal IT resources, meaning you. But for our case, we share our resources and experience with the internal IT team. Now, there are several versions for us to fit individual needs. And what I mean by that is that we don't want to just basically say, we have one version of co-managed IT, and this will solve all your problems. What are your problems? But by the same token, we also don't want to say we have no idea and it's going to be unique every time, because that's not going to be very easy for us to scale, or it's going to be ridiculously expensive for you. And then the final point, a lot of MSPs and vendors are talking about co-managed or CoMITs, and damn few of them openly explain their definition. I did a Google search, and honestly, we're not the greatest as far as SEO or the like. I did a Google search for co-managed, both in just online Google and over in YouTube, and overwhelming response was a single video that about 15 or so MSPs all were using the exact same video, the exact same person. So, anyway. So the traditional MSP approach, managed service providers, this is an industry that was entirely based on the concept of we can do it better than internal IT. So we would approach the CEO and it really just say, hey, replace those folks, we'll do it better. And to be clear, sometimes that's still the case, but nowhere near as much as it used to be, because you have skills, assuming you're doing best practice and you're trying your hardest, you're going to know more about the internal operations of your organizations than we ever will. What if we partnered together? So we've got this, or we've got co-managed IT services, where we actually bring our tools and our experiences and our best practice, which we've worked through working with dozens of companies, a lot of whom are just like yours. And we've already done all the heavy lifting. So what do we need to do? Well, first thing is you need to self-evaluate your internal IT. And this is something that you can do without bringing in the consultant, and especially bringing in the MSP, because quite honestly, you have to have the understanding, or else you're abdicating the responsibility of figuring out what your internal IT is to the managed service provider. And that's kind of like giving the fox the keys to the hen house, isn't it? So traditional IT department, let's talk about that. Traditional IT department is really, you've got these 4 layers. You've got the CIO, IT director. You've got the level 3 technical technician, who's a specialist. And that level 3 could be the person who really knows how to do the server stuff, really knows how to do the infrastructures, the firewalls, all that. Then you've got the level 2s who know some server stuff, but are really good on the desktops. And then you got the level 1s who are the help desk and the relatively newbie type folks. Now, not all roles are filled or necessary. And some internal IT can have dual roles. Depends on the size, the complexity, the maturity of your organization. And in this model, I'm not showing specialists, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And your mileage may absolutely vary, but this is a good starting point for us to have a conversation of the type of organization that you have and that you need. We can actually take this a step further and take these 4 layers, which are over on the left of this slide, and really align them with what their job and roles are. So the CIO, IT director, and they could be named all sorts of things. This person is responsible for overall management, for the overall strategy, all of that for the organization. Then the level 3, they're responsible for the stuff that usually requires a lot more training or a lot more experience. Traditionally, that's infrastructure, servers. And you'll notice I'm leaving security out here, and that's because security permeates all of these. So security is everywhere. And we'll talk about that again a little bit later on. But then the level 2s and the level 1s, those are kind of over on the endpoints, the mobile support, endpoint protection, endpoint management, as well as help desk, helping end users. So you can almost kind of see how we're taking the organizational structure and we're breaking it down as to what type of technology they're working on. And again, and I didn't go over this let's go back to the previous slide so I can show you. Over on the right, the requirements for that role, as you go up from the level 1 to the CIO IT director, the dollars become greater. They have greater pay requirements, and also their experience or training becomes greater. And usually you have need for fewer of them. So now we've taken the people and really kind of pegged them over to the role that they're at. Now, why did we do that? Because we're basically trying to figure out how our department is laid out. And we've developed 5 essential types of IT departments. And those are here. And we're going to go through each one of them. First of all, we have the top heavy. And the top heavy is essentially where they either don't have enough or they don't have any of the level 1 or 2 techs, which often leads to the level 3. So you've got a pretty expensive person who's doing help desk and working on just simple desktop tasks and the like because nobody else is around to do it. So as you can see, it's top heavy because you've got a lot of the heavier top level skills covered, but the lower ones you don't. And we'll talk about this. We'll talk about each one of them actually. So this is top heavy. The next, whoa, it's bottom heavy, the exact opposite. And bottom heavy is really where we've got essentially maybe some great level 1 and level 2 techs, and they're fantastic at working on end user issues, working on mobile devices, desktops, all of that, but they're really not there from the infrastructure or the server stuff, and they're really not there from a strategic perspective of the organization. So now you've got the lower cost and lower experienced people, you got that covered, but not that you don't have the top level folks. That's why we call this bottom heavy. Then you've got thin. And thin is essentially you got all the people, they're just not productive enough. So you need to add people or you need to make them more productive. And we'll talk about that too. And then finally, as far as the negative ones or the ones that are a challenge, you have the one-person band. And this is often where we see, especially where an organization, we see this a lot, where a company has grown and they've grown to the point where they'll make one person, you're our IT person. Why? Because either they have the most IT stuff at home or they were late to a departmental meeting. But any way you slice it, they're usually either not trained well enough and they're expected to be able to do everything. Those are usually the folks who are most there for burnout and also for organizations who have some of the most challenges. And we'll talk a little bit about that. There's a popular meme regarding Jurassic Park would have been avoided had they had more than one IT person. I think that's a good one. Then finally, we've got Goldilocks IT. That's where right number of right people in the right seats with the right tools and the right experience. And notice that can actually be something at a point in time because you may have absolutely the right people and everything's peachy hunky-dory and then something happens such as now all of a sudden we have to work from home, work from anywhere. Now all of a sudden we have to take ransomware a lot more seriously. Now all of a sudden we have to add CMMC. Now all of a sudden we have to add NIST as a security requirement. Now all of a sudden you get the idea. Okay, so Goldilocks is absolutely fantastic, but if you look at Goldilocks as simply a here we are right now today, careful. You need to make sure that not only is it there, but we're Goldilocks IT because we know where we're going 6 months from now. And we know, and we're taking steps to make sure that we're going to be protected throughout the changes. So now we've got enough idea that we've talked about right here so that you've got an idea of what your organization is looking for. And you've also got where some of your skills are missing and some of your vulnerabilities are. Now, let's talk about types of co-managed IT. First of all, the default co-managed solution is Seagulls. And Seagulls are essentially the vendor who we bring in out of nowhere and they drop by, they make a lot of noise, they leave a lot of droppings, and then fly away, leaving you to clean up. And obviously I'm exaggerating a little bit, but are essentially vendor solutions that are brought in for a particular vendor requirement, a particular project, a particular upgrade, and then they come in, they apply their solution, and they fly away. And this is traditional, and so especially for the one-person jobs or for the bottom heavy, where you bring in that third-party solution to go and install a solution that is needed right now. We're upgrading the server. We're upgrading the operating system. We're migrating from A to B. We're doing all those kind of things. The problem, though, after that project's done, they're gone. And yeah, you may be able to get a little bit of support from them for a while, but often the documentation isn't up to snuff. They didn't actually train you well enough so that you can support it now. So every time you need something done, you have to call them and bring them back in again, which is additional money and not always planned for. So it's an on-demand relationship. And if something happens, number one, do you even know something bad is happening or happened? You know, I've often seen where we've gone into an organization that had somebody from the outside upgrade servers, and we go in there and it turns out that their hard drives, they've had a failed hard drive there for who knows how long, because nobody ever told them what the light blinking meant on the front of the server. It's happened more than once. And most IT solutions, you can't have that fire and forget. You have to, once something's implemented, you have to manage it. You have to maintain it. You have to upgrade it. You have to monitor it. And seagulls don't do that. So when we talk about co-managed as it stands today, let's talk STMPS. Services, tools, methodologies, portals. These are the things that we do within our organization because by and large, and I'll talk Simplex-IT, a majority of our clients are what we call pure MSP, pure managed services. We are the entire IT department. So all the things that you're doing, back to this slide, we have to manage, and we manage it through the STMPS. But when we implement a stamp, we're implementing a stamp for all, again, dozens of clients. When you implement a stamp, you're doing it for one. And there's some benefits there, but there's also some risks. So when you roll your own stamps, you have to go out. You have to research your solutions. Which ones are out there? Which ones are best? Whether we're talking about a backup solution, which antivirus endpoint to use, encryption, 365 backups, monitoring, ticketing, any of the things. There's literally dozens of categories of stamps. You research your solutions. You have to choose which one you're going to go with. And usually this is before you actually learn it. Then you have to learn it. Then you have to install it. Then you have to configure it. And in some cases, you can just bring in a seagull to do all these things, the 1 through 5. But then you still have to manage it. You still have to monitor it. And you still have to upgrade it. And those are ongoing things moving forward, which if you didn't learn it, you're dependent upon the seagull. And the seagull's already gone and they're working on their next client. Because it's not an ongoing relationship. Simplex-IT, we've already done all of these things. We've already selected the stamp, so we're not trying to help you figure out which one will work best. We've already determined that. We've already determined what our best solutions are, and we're not doing this from a resale standpoint because we're using it to deliver the same services to all of our clients. So we're not just selling you our dog food. We're using it on dozens of clients. We've got our best practice. We've got our documentation. We've got our training because we had to train all of our techs how to do it. We know how to manage it. We know how to configure it. We know how to monitor it. And most of our experience is using these stamps, not selling them. So we're not just selling you the stamps. We're selling you the relationship of our knowledge of using them. And there's 3 models of co-managed IT. And they start with subscription, which is the simplest one, easiest to get into, least amount of value, if you ask me. Then you have silo IT, and we talked a little bit about that. And then you've got CoMITs. And CoMITs is probably the closest one to our unique proposition. Number 1, subscription. That's the easy one. And that's where, for all purposes, you're purchasing services, renting services, software as a service, hardware as a service, Microsoft 365 as an example, AWS, Azure, antivirus, backups, whatever. But all you're doing is that service. There's no consultative service along with that. There's no significant management or monitoring on the part of the provider. There can be some, but the reseller, Simplex-IT in this case, is easier to engage than a large reseller. And it's a best fit for all of the types of, top heavy, bottom heavy, thin, so on. But it's the minimum benefit. And often you're going to pay the same price as you would if you bought it directly from Microsoft, but you have an easier way to engage us to add additional value. But that usually comes at an additional cost. So use this. We don't actually push this a lot as far as marketing or advertising or the like, because it's the lowest bang for the buck, I think, on everybody's part, meaning yours and ours. The second is silo IT. And this is one where we're strictly focused on a subset of your IT that we're going to be responsible for. So we strictly focus on some subset. An example of this would be server or cloud backups, SQL, cloud security, any of those sort of things. And this is beyond the subscription, because subscription, you're basically getting the tool or the product and that's it. In this particular case, you're getting the entire management of that. So a subscription would be a subscription of Microsoft 365 licensing. Yay. A silo IT would be not only a subscription of it, but monitoring, managing, making sure the security configuration is appropriate. All of those are included, obviously, for additional price. Now, in this case, you have minimal interaction with the partner, with Simplex-IT, because we're working on the stuff over here, you're working on the stuff over here, but absolutely it can happen when collaboration is appropriate. But you don't have to learn or staff or manage or maintain a specialty for this. So Microsoft. So the managed service provider, Simplex-IT, we bring the stamps and the knowledge to a specific need. And this is a best fit for Goldilocks or Thin, who has specific specialized needs. So we have several clients where we do all their SQL, their BI, Oracle. We do all their database stuff because we've got resources that's really good at that, but they do all of their IT stuff. We have a couple also who we do the backup and business continuity solutions as well. And then finally, we've got CoMITs. And that's where we bring, because we've been talking about stamps, but we bring all of our stamps to support your organization, all that are appropriate. So all of our software tools, methodologies, portals, we bring all those in. And then we install it, we configure it, we monitor, and we maintain them using our knowledge and best practice. So you don't have to learn in a vacuum. You don't have to be dependent upon a vendor coming in, doing a seagull on you and then leaving. We give you internal access to those stamps and the training that's appropriate. We make sure it's configured, best practice, and to take into account whatever your specific requirements are. And then the responsibility to actually manage them and move forward with them is split depending upon your needs. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So essentially, we give your team our superpowers. Because why do we have these stamps? We have these stamps because we want to make our team as productive as possible so that our clients can be as productive as possible when it comes to their use of IT. So all we're doing is we're really just, instead of giving it to ourselves, we're giving it to you. So that's the whole point, is we're simply taking your team and making them more productive. So you remember this, how we had this? So you got the CIO, IT director, management, and the infrastructure servers, level 2, level 1. So now we have full CoMITs. So we bring all the tools over, all the stamps over. Internal IT, you guys, you're primarily responsible for all IT functions, but using our stamps. So Simplex-IT, we're available for advice and support, and you can even escalate stuff over at our end. So remember the thin IT where you didn't have enough people or they weren't productive enough throughout? Give them the stamps, and your people are going to get significantly more productive. And even if they run into situations that they're not entirely sure on what to do, we're available for advice and support right there. And since we're already using the stamps and we're already seeing what you're seeing, our learning curve is minimal. And so is yours. But then we've also got desktop CoMITs. And this is where essentially we bring all the stamps, just like with the full CoMITs. And internal IT, your folks are responsible for endpoints, mobile, help desk, end users using our stamps. So we're still back to that. We're making you a lot more productive, but we're going to be responsible for the infrastructure, the servers, and the VCIOs, because virtual CIO, Chief Information Officer. And the reason being is because you don't have the skills, the people that's necessary for that role. So instead of hiring half an infrastructure person, which is hard to do, we'll take over that role using our stamps and tools. So as you can kind of see, this is best fit for bottom heavy when you've got the level 1s and level 2s, but you don't have level 3 virtual CIO IT director. But I want to make something really clear here. This doesn't happen in a vacuum, meaning that we're still going to work with the level 1 and level 2s, even when it comes to some of the server infrastructure virtual CIO. First of all, because we don't want you guys to get bushwhacked. We don't want you to see things happen and learn at the last minute, oh my God, that this change is going to happen or the like. But we also want you to view this as an opportunity for you to learn. Because you may be sitting here going, yeah, I'm a level 2 right now, but I want to learn more about servers. I want to learn more about infrastructure and the like. We're fine with that. In fact, that's the best kind of CoMITs clients are the ones who want to take advantage of this relationship to learn. So we give that. We give the ability for you to actually take a look and see what we're doing so you can develop the skills. And then finally, server CoMITs. Just flip it. This is for that situation where we're still bringing the same stamps over, but you're going to be responsible for the infrastructure, the servers, virtual CIO role using our stamps. We're responsible for the endpoints and end users. And why is that? Because you've got the level 3, the CIO roles filled. You don't have the level 1s and level 2s. So you can just flip that over. But again, I want to stress that we're not leaving the CIO dry. We're not meaning the infrastructure, the server management. You folks are still able to use our tools. So you're still going to see in your day-to-day operation benefits of productivity and the like through using our stamps. And also, you're not going to have level 3 people being asked to go work on end users. Bottom line on all of this, you lean on our strengths. We've developed a team of over 20 people and dozens of companies, organizations who rely on us both for pure MSP, meaning we do everything, as well as co-managed. Because again, we've been doing this for a long time. So lean on our strengths. All of our CoMITs plans includes advice. So if you just want to run through something with us, it's included with the monthly fee. Or you can escalate a ticket, in which case it'll cost you because you're asking us to actually take care of the issue. But you can escalate it in such a way that you ask to learn and to work with our techs on dealing with the ticket, so you won't have to escalate it a second time. And part of our job is we keep the stamps upgraded and configured because we're using them for a majority of our clients. So it's in our best interest to make sure we've got the best practice. So we're going to upgrade them when it's appropriate, but we're going to test the upgrades beforehand. We're going to change the configuration when we find better ways to use it. And even if we find out that a particular stamp, a particular tool is not as good as it used to be, we'll look to change. We're not going to sell or monitor or manage something, after it's no longer the best solution, because that's what we're using. We also include the training. How? Well, we train our techs. Every time we bring on techs, we brought on a new tech this month. We're bringing in another one next month. And we will be training those people on how to use the ticket, how to use our stamps. We also listen. If you've got better ideas on how to do it, boy, do we want to hear it. Because a better idea from you helps all the dozens of our other clients. And we're not stupid. And we don't believe in long-term agreements. So our agreements have 30-day out. So it's only if we can look across the table from each other or virtually and say, yes, we're each getting value out of this agreement. Okay, so we've handled 3 things so far. What is co-managed IT? We talked about that. It's the relationship. How to self-evaluate your internal IT, whether it's top, bottom, heavy, thin, one-person band, Goldilocks. And then we've talked about the types of co-managed IT, starting with subscription, silo, CoMITs, and how to match them to your internal IT type. So hopefully this has been useful for you. So how do you make this happen for your organization? And by the way, if you're a CEO who's listening to this and you're thinking about this from the internal IT, we're happy to have this conversation with them as well, but talk to them about this. What we want to do is we want to have a consultation, a strategy session, blueprint call it whatever the heck you will. Now, how this works is it's a 30-minute virtual call or meeting, and we want to talk about the current status quo for the IT for your organization. And I want to hear about it from your perspective. Okay? Not only from the technical, but also how you're doing. Now, keep in mind, I've been a CIO, I've been an IT director, I've been a network administrator, I've been a desktop person, I've been a programmer, I've been a consultant, you name it, I've worn the hat. And I've been in this business for a long time because I am old. And I can give you a good perspective. That's one of my superpowers. But let's talk about your situation, challenges, opportunities. Honestly, some of them may not have anything to do with technology. They may have to do with how do you get your organization to value technology? How do they get your organization to value you? How many of you have run into this situation where, you've been saying, hey, we need to go virtual, we need to go virtual, we need to go virtual, and nothing from management. So they bring in this consultant, and this consultant says, yeah, I should go virtual. And they're like, why didn't you come up with such a brilliant idea? You're sitting there going, I've been saying it for a minute. We won't let that happen. We want to make sure that when we talk, it's you and us talking together to management. because that's where we bring our superpowers together. So this is about you. It's not about us. We'll get to do that later. And any questions you have about your unique situation, I'll give answers to. All I ask is the last 5 minutes. We'll talk about what role, if any, Simplex-IT can have with you and your organization. We'll introduce the co-managed IT services concept to you. If it's a good fit, we'll explore it further. If not, we don't. One thing, and I've said this many times at MSP conferences when I'm talking about this, the only thing worse than a good co-managed opportunity getting away is a bad co-managed opportunity signing up. So I am just as eager to determine if it's a bad fit as I am to see if it's a good fit. And the only way it's a good fit is if you see the value. If you don't, I am not going to twist your arm. But at the end of the time, you're going to have a better feel for your internal IT options. You'll have some good optional next steps. And I think you'll have some great resources that we'll make available to you as well. Yeah, now we get into the sales pitch. Do you feel that temperature just go down a few degrees? So total value, $750. Yeah, we'll call it that. If you book it now, it is free. What a shock. But here's the catch. And this part's serious. Only 5 spots are available. And actually, because remember I told you that we're re-recording this or the recording didn't work. We actually only now have 2 spots available because we already had 3 people reply to it since we just did this earlier in the week. So all you got to do is email CoMITs at simplex-it.com. And here's my personal guarantee. No sales pitch till the end. Only if it makes sense are we going to move forward with anything. And if it's not valuable to you, $50 to the charity of your choice. And so far, and I've had this conversation about 15, 20 times easily over the last year or so, I have yet to give $50 to anybody. CoMITs at simplex-it.com. That's all you got to do. But here's what I'm going to give you. I'll give you 2 copies of 2 of my books. I Don't Want Your Job, which is written for you, the internal IT person, and a CEO Survival Guide to Information Technology, which is a great book. Well, I wrote it, so what are you going to do? Which is a book that is written specifically for CEOs that don't want to become geeks. But it talks to them about the technology that they have to understand in order to make IT be of value to them. And then we're also going to give you a couple of booklets. One is Cybersecurity Essentials for Business Owners, and the other is the 2022 IT Services Buyer's Guide. The IT Services Buyer's Guide is as much here's why you should go with managed services, so it's a bit of a traditional marketing piece. There's still some useful stuff in there for you. So that one you may not want to share with your CEO, but I leave that up to you. And if you want, I'm happy to actually send a copy of either or both of those books for both you and your boss. If you want to learn more, go to our website, simplex-it.com/CoMITs. It specifically talks about that. And again, co-managed IT services for 2022. Consultation strategy session blueprint call. To get one of those, CoMITs at simplex-it.com. And that's pretty much it. So I hope this has been useful to you. Co-managed IT is ridiculously valuable, and there's a lot of buzz out there, and I hope this helps to identify a little bit more about what it specifically is and how it can hopefully help you. Love to talk to you, and take care. Bye.